This meeting is being recorded.
Ouch.
That's funny how your voice changes when you do that, man. How do you do that?
I'm good.
Better than that.
All right, folks, this is the October meeting of the St. Louis Unix Users Group, October 9th. We're starting here.
Can you see my awesome screen?
Yes, you're on the screen,
Awesome
although it's way too small to read anything.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Bring out your that way you don't have to see anything.
Save you the trouble, right?
Right.
And our first speaker tonight is
AI stream, vulnerability management.
Our first speaker tonight is Tony Zafiropoulos, going to be talking to us about security and artificial intelligence. Tony, the floor is yours.
So I was I try to keep up with the crazy things going on. And so one of the things that I like to do is I like to ask different AI engines to help me in doing my jobs, which is cybersecurity for various clients, which will remain nameless. So what I did was I asked AI to create me a outline for a presentation. So this is the outline it gave me. And then I added a few things, of course. So, first thing it said was a overview of cybersecurity challenges. All right. Well, as you know, we got every tool that gets created will be used for us and against us. So the generative AI is being used by the hackers to improve their phishing attacks. So all of your future, well, not all of, but many future phishing is going to look much better than it used to look. Okay, that's basically what I've been saying. Large language models. So I found this interesting little, I don't know if you guys can see this though. I mean, I know probably too small. Yeah. I don't know how bigger I can make it.
Hey, Tony, go full screen on your.
Yeah. Okay.
And that go full screen there, and then view Zoom page width.
Okay. Well, it got confused. It's all right. Let me try to see if I can backtrack. Didn't like that. Let me do it one step at a time here. How's that? That doesn't like that.
There we go. No.
Need to have like a single page with, there it is. A little bit smaller. Anyway. So this image was trying to explain how the threat actors create with a small investment. They're like inundating our email boxes. Yeah, this is not going to work. Maybe I can just go over it. Maybe that's best. Where are we here? I'm going to try to do something. Anyways. Well, it doesn't, crazy word. Part of the problem is it's too large and Word doesn't really work too well. Yeah, gotta make it too much. So if I make it smaller, then it's no good. So are we doing a ping attack now? beautiful thing.
Dive.
Yes, dive. Well, that's a little bit better. Anyway. Hmm. So, okay, first of all, a hacker creates a fake email using every now and then I read some kind of a press release by the FBI or the various government agencies saying we took down 20 domains again. That's what they're doing because the hackers are constantly creating these new fake domains. A threat actor registered domain. So you're always receiving these great late invoice. Yeah, you must pay this invoice. So he spends $20 and he sends out millions of emails. And as soon as you click on it, anyway, I think, did you guys understand all this, or do I really need to go over it?
I think it would be helpful for a lot of people if they haven't seen all the vocabulary. And
Okay. Let me try to find the other side of it then.
like Oracle 365 is Oracle. That's Oracle's. What's O365 mean?
Office 365.
Office. So that's like Microsoft.
Yes.
Okay. I was trying to get a
Yeah.
standard, like,
Well, there's the biggest problem.
yeah, that's your first mistake.
Well, it's true, but I know what you guys are saying, and I'm not on that, but the rest of the world is, unfortunately. They haven't gotten the message yet.
I get it. We all here get it. But now I know what the O365 credential means.
Yes. So I don't know if I can actually, because
Maybe
I think
the
I need to
image,
just make it
copy it.
smaller.
Put it into like Paint or something.
Yeah, that's a good point. Oh, I have better than Paint. GIMP. Of course, let's see if it works. Oh, here it is. I don't know if you guys can see that, if it's large enough. I can make it larger.
I can read it, but if you just describe what each of the bubbles is doing, I think people
Let me
can follow
do
up.
like one quick size increase. It's not too hard. And it shouldn't destroy it too badly. Oh, maybe not. 'Cause I have to do other modifications. All right, we'll just go back to this. Anyway, all right. So the problem here is the hacker not only has to he's trying to get paid. He's creating a whole bunch of things. So he creates like a fake email. He accesses your email. He copies your invoices and he manipulates them so that he manipulates an invoice so that way it looks like an invoice that you've used in the past. So the fake invoices and the CFO approve to the wire transfer department to his transfer, which is an international bank. So there's all kinds of red flags here, but because it looks similar to the previous invoice, and the fake CFO responded and said, yes, go ahead and pay it. Even though, maybe the CFO, the email is very similar, but it's not quite right to the real CFO, let's say. And if you're not carefully looking at all your emails, if you're very busy and you just want to get done in your 8-hour workday, that's when this stuff works, unfortunately. And then, then you're screwed basically. And I mean, we're talking millions of dollars. These are not like small transactions. And a lot of times the companies that get screwed the most are the small businesses that have overseas business. Because it's very hard for them to understand, unless they slow everything down, which sometimes they don't want to. They're like, well, we get things done quick because we're a small business. Well, sometimes that's not a good idea. Anyway, that's just one example.
Well, the other thing about small businesses is even when they understand, they just don't have the resources to check everything.
Yeah, that's true.
And one thing to think about if you're in business, even if like I'm a sole proprietor, I'm a consultant. If I accept electronic payments from people, almost anything you can do electronically can be faked or hijacked.
Yes.
And so I end up doing 200 hours of work for somebody and use up my retainer. And I say, okay, guys, you need to repay me. And somebody hijacks the payment.
Right. Right.
Well, that money is in, out of Mongolia somewhere. I'm not paid. One suggestion for people who run small businesses here, you can buy basically cybercrime insurance as part of your standard business policy. You might want to go out and look at what it would cost. Because even if you're not in the business of transferring money for other people, you can still get zapped by this stuff.
Yes, unfortunately. And with the reason that I bring this up is because the invoices and what used to happen is you could see a phishing email and say, oh, well, half this email is misspelled. Well, with the advent of AI, there's a lot of the email is not going to be misspelled. So it's not going to be as easy to tell this is a fake company. This is a fake email. So you have to create better safeguards to make sure that you don't get hacked with this attack. Okay. So we got to do proactive things. So, besides going forward with this crazy outline, let me go back to my browser here. So this is the AI chat thing that I create, u.com. I signed up with u.com. I didn't get into the chat GPT. The reason I do u.com is because they tell you exactly all the links that it gets the information from. Plus, I'm sure you could do that with ChatGPT. I don't know what you can do with ChatGPT. Doesn't matter to me. So if you notice, I have this vulnerability manager section, which I created. You can create your own little subheading instead of the smart. Each one of these, like Genius, allows you to do more sophisticated. It could debug code. Some of them, like research, can create code. It just becomes more actually you can use the GPT-4 engine as well if you want to. But if interestingly, so look at this, for example, Windows 7. So what happens is I created this section. Basically, I can put anything in here, and it wants more sophisticated, more information. But so if I put like a vulnerability in here, it will tell me more about it. So if you put any kind of like a current attack in here, it looks up the vulnerability specifically to that. I don't have to explain it anymore. Of course, it's going to say Windows 7, it's obsolete. Can you tell me what you're looking for or how to? I'm just being too broad with it. That's the thing with AI. It doesn't like broad questions. I don't know how much you guys have played with it.
Well,
How much have
it
you?
doesn't know what you're saying. The problem is,
Yeah,
well, there was one great one. If you ask it if it takes 2 hours to dry 5 shirts on a line, how long will it take to dry 10 shirts? And the answer is 2 hours because they're drying on a line. And it will tell you, it will multiply the time by the number of shirts.
right.
It has no semantic. It's not AI. This is not generative. It's regurgitative. All it is a big freaking probability table of word order.
Yeah, that's true. But so take a look at this. Okay. Um. All right. So I'm gonna take it down to my level. So I have a insurance company.
That's a bowl.
So I'm gonna tell it to create a minimum and an outline for a security policy for an insurance company and keeping
Make sure.
the compliance for it for insurance industry. And I don't really know that much about insurance industries. I mean, maybe it will ask me or it won't ask me. So, but maybe I have to figure out and tell it. This is the way I use it. So it'll create an initial outline and then maybe it doesn't do it right, or maybe it gives me enough information. So then I can give it more questions and decide how we're going to create the security policy for the insurance industry clients. So one aspect I didn't tell it is how many people there are, how many. So of course it's going to do things like, see, it's spitting out everything and anything. So I have to then obviously look through this and make sure that this is what I want. And sometimes what I look for then obviously is what regulatory body is. I misspelled that, but it sometimes figures it out. The thing is I agree with you. It's the way I'm using it is a fancy search engine, but it is, if you're not careful, it will regurgitate just a bunch of words back at you. That's correct.
Well, and the thing is, what it regurgitates is based on the words that you give it.
Right.
So your words are going to be the starting point for whatever it pukes back. So
But
that's how you guide it, is by choosing the words. Which one of the things that makes it much more dangerous with phishing is that in the past you'd get all of the language oddities. Slavic
Right.
languages don't have articles. Chinese people don't get plurals because there's no way to conjugate words in Chinese languages. So you can see when somebody sends you, many foots, or they leave the out of every third sentence,
Right.
it's garbage.
Right. It's obvious.
ChatGPT
The
allows these,
grammar is obvious.
well, and the mistakes tell you where the phishing came from. But now the difficult thing is because it's starting with, it doesn't know what anything means. It starts out with a table of words. It can generate grammatically correct phishing from incorrect grammar in the input. So it actually masks a lot of the mistakes they would have made.
Yeah, and they're different mistakes. There's still going to be some semantical issues, but they're not going to be the grammar type issues. So anyway, so this is how I build. So if I'm supposed to be building a security policy for an insurance company that is a brand new client of mine, I mean, now I have to start reading a bunch of compliance. Besides the HIPAA, I know HIPAA. Yeah, well, I don't know why it's picked HIPAA, but I guess if you're in the health insurance. Anyway. So yeah, I mean, it also, of course, depends on what kind of insurance. So that might be something that I have to tell it. But I'm just trying to give an example here, an off-the-cuff example, where we are here. So of course, the some of the more obvious, AI is automated programming that is driven by how you tell it, or you creating a program that needs to be developed. Like Palo Alto, for example, is creating AI into their systems. So they're developing a way so you can ask the Palo Alto machine without understanding cybersecurity terminology. You can just ask it, what are all the Windows connections right now? You don't have to know what port it is. You don't have to know anything, but you can just give it like a question like that. They're building those kinds of things into a lot of the products these days. So that is kind of interesting. It's kind of nice, I guess. But that's just like improving the product with some new programming. It's not a huge upgrade. Of course, one of the predictive stuff is helpful if they work on it well enough, where the AI can actually predict better depending on what you've got. But that all depends on the positive and the negative. So if you have to train it. It's all about the training. Just like machine learning is all about the training. You have to tell it this is the good network traffic and this is the bad network traffic. You're not going to get away from that interaction. We're dealing with that with one of our clients. We're trying to create an environment where only the good network traffic is in the network. So obviously we have to know what is good. So then if they come up with a new program that they're going to use tomorrow, well, obviously that's bad until we tell it that that's good. There's no way to get around that massive, like, constant feedback. But it is possible and it is happening where now in the future, if a malware gets installed, and it tries to go onto the network to grab its stuff from the command and control servers, it won't work because that's not good traffic. So you have to find the software out there that they're building them all if they haven't built them already. I mean, the other thing that I like to do is I like to pay attention to the stock market, because if a company is doing well, it has money and it puts money into R&D. But if a company is not doing well, it doesn't have money, and obviously it's going down the wrong end here. Anyway, so I mean, I don't really have, besides the few things, 6:52. How long have I been talking?
20
Too
minutes,
long?
25 minutes.
Yeah, okay, that's probably enough. I mean, I don't really have, the only other thing that I would like to say is that the ethical considerations is obviously really important, and even like who decides the AI and how the AI is going to be used. You have to be able to test the AI to make sure that it's doing what it's supposed to be doing, and it's transparent enough. I wouldn't. It's hard. That's why I kind of picked the AIs that I picked, because they're more transparent than the other guys. That doesn't mean that they're, completely transparent. I doubt if that's even possible. I think one interesting thing about these AI things is these engines is that you really know, if you watch some of the developers and when they discuss, what's going on in their software, they don't really know what's happening. By that I mean, when something new happens in their software, they don't exactly know how that works, because it's just too large for any one person. Just too much to keep track of. That's why I think we need to be more focused on ethical considerations than just making sure let's get whatever we want out of AI as soon as possible.
Well, someday we'll have AI. We don't.
Yeah,
The
that's
problem.
true.
People are treating the current generation of stuff as if it were AI because it sounds like
Yeah.
AI. And
and
it sounds like a duck, but it doesn't walk like a duck.
the funny thing too is that the people who called it AI was many, many years ago, and it just now, for whatever reason, because of ChatGPT, everybody's glommed onto that marketing term.
Yeah, and the vast majority of them have no clue.
Yes.
Yeah,
Anyway,
Well, it's interesting. My current client, they've said no one can use AI for anything. It's illegal to use AI, period. And so they've disabled DuckDuckGo, but enabled Google. Because DuckDuckGo has a separate AI product. Google's got their AI built into it, so you can have Google do whatever you want to. So what they've done is put everyone onto the system that promotes the AI and deny people access to the system that doesn't use the AI. Most people have no flipping idea
yeah,
what they're
they're
looking
not
at.
really sure what's actually happening there.
And if you told them they have no flipping idea, they'd get all upset.
Right.
You've insulted them. Am I
Well,
right?
you might say it more politely, but the answer is they have no flipping idea.
Yeah.
Well, I think I overstepped my time here, even though, does anybody has any other questions, or I really just wanted to give a quick overview of some of the things I've been working on, but I knew it wasn't going to take that long, really.
I just have one thing to say. I have been using AI search engines, about 5 of them, which I just listed in the chat. And I've noticed that it is kind of a good idea if you're asking questions and expecting a decent answer to maybe confirm your question with one or more different of the AI engines, just to see how the results are.
Yes.
I just tried the shirt on the clothesline idea with them, and they all 5 of those gave reasonable answers. They were accurate, and it did say that the drying time should be the same for 2 shirts as 1 shirt. So
Okay, so they've advanced.
perhaps they've
Yeah.
they've made some changes. I think it's learning, and I think it's kind of coming along.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
the other thing that I would like to mention. That's a good point. That even if you don't like or are unhappy with AI today, I would keep an eye on it because,
Because you don't have a choice.
well, that's one thing, but things are changing fast. So it does learn that they're improving the algorithms. It's almost like you have to figure out how to best use it correctly.
Which is the
Not
problem, because most people have no bloody idea how to.
well, but you got to start playing with it.
Yeah.
God, don't leave me jokes like that, man. Please. That's not
Yeah.
fair.
Yeah, well, that was my last word.
Playing with yourself. No. That's the problem is that because there are no guardrails and because nobody knows how to apply the guardrails yet, a lot of people are going to cause a lot of harm before anyone really takes the time to create the guardrails that we need.
Well, but that's like normal with what happened with the craziness of Microsoft back when they were doing their thing, and they were just kind of running with stuff. This is very
They
typical of
still are.
us. We always take the technology and run with it, and then it's like we're running with scissors.
I think you should. I think how fast you can get your feedback is how determines how much you should use AI, right? I think developers should use as much AI as possible because you get your feedback immediately from the compiler. You know what I mean? Or from just testing it out, from just running your app. So I think developers should use as much AI as possible because if the AI gives you a wrong answer, you'll find out immediately. If you're like a lawyer and you get some stuff from the AI and you won't figure out whether it was right or not until you're in front of a judge, well, then you shouldn't use AI like at all, right? Because that would be really bad. Your feedback loop is way too long. And so I think it just depends on how fast your feedback loop is as to whether you should trust AI or not. And then I guess also the consequences of getting it wrong. But like once again, for developers, that's extremely low, right? If it's wrong, you just revert the commit and try again. So that's my take on it. And I do agree, it's hard to trust an AI that doesn't give you its sources. That's why I like Gemini and Bing and yeah, they both give sources. So those are the ones that I like. I don't like using ChatGPT because it doesn't give sources, or at least it didn't last time I used it.
I think some people say that it does, but then I guess maybe you have to pay for that. Who knows? I don't know.
I think it does now, and Perplexity it does indeed.
Okay.
Good. I'm glad they caught up to doing that. That's awesome.
Well, I'm glad I at least learned a few other engines to try.
This is Stan. My question is, do your customers understand these policies that you have them create, the written policies? Do you find they have a difficulty understanding it?
Well,
Or do you have to write it down to a 4th grade level?
Yes.
no, yeah, we do. You know what I've done is I've created 2 different policies. One for the users and one for the IT people. So then I can go into more detail. I don't have to go into dumb proofing things, but I do make it simpler for the users. So I create like 2 versions of it. Because the reality is that the users don't really need to know what you're doing with the network or the email server or whatever else. they don't really care about any of that stuff.
They just
Thanks
want
for
it
that
to work.
idea. Thanks for that idea.
Sure, no problem. I think I appreciate it. That's 7 p.m. So
Hmm.
it's all good.
Further questions? If not,
Thank you very much. That was Tony Zafiropoulos. Tony's a frequent speaker for us, and he's the principal at excuse me, can't talk. The website is out there on the calendar entry. So
Yeah, don't worry about it. Just fixvirus.com. It doesn't matter. I'm sure. I think you've got my link someplace in the presentation that was sent.
it's in the calendar, it's in the meetup, and I
Right.
believe it's also on the webpage. So,
Yeah, that's good. That's all everybody needs.
all right. Let's see. Tony, you gonna stay with us for a little while, or are you gonna be heading
Just
off?
a few minutes. I have to get going, but go ahead.
Okay. So yeah, if anybody thinks of anything else, they can speak up. This is the gooey middle of our meeting. Our general meeting on the second Wednesday of the month is always has this gooey middle format. We have a speaker on the front tutorial. That was Tony tonight, and then the middle section, which has Q&A and our announcements. Also does the introductions. I'm Gary Meyer. I'm our MC for tonight and the president of this group. Our vice president is Stan Reichert. He's the guy making all the buttons push there and making the right screen come up. Our treasurer is Lee Lambert, who keeps all of our money in place and also is the host of the system that runs our web servers, our mail servers, and so we really appreciate all the work he does. And he's also pushing buttons here. Secretary is Ken Johnson. We need a chat monitor for just about every one of these meetings, but if anybody would like to just keep an eye on the chat, there's some people who feel more comfortable typing things in rather than saying something. So if somebody sees something in chat that doesn't get answered, go ahead, be our monitor, speak up on the speaker and or on the microphone and just let us know that there's something in chat.
I've got the chat for now, Lee.
Great, fantastic, thank you. So that was
Grant.
That's Grant, thank you. Okay, topic wrangler. That's somebody who's working not during the meetings necessarily, but just throughout the month, looking for future speakers. So either figuring out what topics would be good or what people would be good to speak on some topic. So, and of course, the last one is those speakers themselves. So anybody who wants to help us fill some of those roles, we appreciate it. Okay, announcements. 8 days from now, i.e. next week on Thursday, is the St. Louis SLUUG meeting, also called SCL Linux. It's similar to this meeting in that it's a speaker format. There's a predetermined talk, an abstract, title, and that's already out there. It's on the calendar and on Meetup, and I don't know if it's on the homepage for STL Linux yet, but do come and join us next Thursday. The topic is going to be linters and other code review tools, and our speaker will be James Conroy. Okay, 5 days later, the fourth Tuesday, is the new Linux meeting. New Linux meeting does not have a set speaker, does not have a predetermined topic. It's basically whoever comes in and says they are the newest person to be using Linux, least experienced person. And if you claim that title, you get to ask a question, and everybody else tries to come up with a good answer for it. It's a great place for people who are relatively new to Linux. It's also a great place for people who are familiar with Linux because it's amazing. Sometimes the discussions we get in, there's people who've been running Linux for years, and they go, "I didn't know to do that," or "Oh, that's easier way than the way I've done it." So, and of course, those more experienced users are the ones who come up with those good answers. So everybody should come. A reminder: the Debian 10 long-term support has ended. It ended back at the end of June. We bring that up because our Bach server, Bach machine, is due for an upgrade. You need to get off Debian 10 and hopefully move up to 12. So we already have some volunteers, but you join that team of volunteers to work on doing that upgrade. Go to that website there, or that mail there, and let us know you're interested in helping out with that team. Let's see. The new SLUUG website being built by Sean. We've got a couple presentations on it. Sean, you got anything you want to say about it tonight?
Yeah, at some point, Stan asked me to just make some changes to it, and so I have those ready to show if we want to do that maybe at the end or something. But yeah, nothing else.
I think that's great. We'll look at that later.
Okay. And later, also, when we're done with our main presentation night, of course, there'll be questions and answers for that presentation, but we can also go back to just kind of general Q&A as well. So let's see, anybody have any other announcements, things that are coming up, things that are on the calendar, things that we should all know about?
I'd like to note that we have somebody that's in the chat room showing as signed on as RS. Would that be Richard Stallman, or is that somebody else?
Best odds it's not Richard.
Okay.
I don't think he'd be a system like Zoom.
Richard's always kind of secretive, though. He would just go by his initials. So. Okay, so let's see. If anybody really needs to get in an early queue or question, call for help because they have to leave later, now would be a good time to ask a question. So you can think about that as we show our other affiliated groups there. There's the LUUG, the New Linux Group. The Slack meeting is the St. Louis Area Computer Club. It's we always consider it to be more hardware oriented. We will even talk about how to get your Microsoft stuff running on the computer. So a lot more oriented towards the architecture, the hardware, and I find it amazing because I was sure when the world hit with COVID, and we started doing everything online, that we were going to just have a terrible time trying to keep the Slack group going, because how can we talk about hardware? It's not something we got on the screen. It's been amazing. Stan and Phil and the other guys who were always there keeping this running. It's amazing how they can actually talk through what the hardware is and what the possibilities are. So you're all welcome to come to that. There's a graphical calendar, that's actually a Google Calendar that we maintain. And we of course list our own stuff on it. Many years ago, we started listing just any techie type thing that might interest our clientele or our members that happens in St. Louis, and we started putting that on there. And about the time that COVID hit, we were starting to already put on remote things from other cities, even other countries, because they were the type of stuff we would all be interested in, again, what would interest our members. So that's what our calendar consists of. Please go to it. If you've got any suggestions on what should be on it, send them email to editor@sluug.org. If you see errors, send an email to editor@sluug.org, and we'll try and get it straightened out. And SLUUG sponsored events are highlighted in red. So those are the ones that we are actually running. Okay. Our members ask questions and sometimes provide answers. Yep, that's about the way it works. You can sign up for our announce list. That's a very limited traffic. Usually comes out usually only about twice a month right now, sometimes 3 times. But it basically just usually gives a brief announcement of things like this meeting, maybe some other special events coming up. The discuss list, more for a general discussion. There's no, you don't have to get your posting approved. It just shows up out there, and other people just suggest answers to it. So again, it's not a whole high traffic, but it's amazing. Sometimes somebody will put out a question and there'll be 8 answers in a couple hours, and other times nothing happens for a couple days. So, steering committee, if you like seeing sausage made, please come to the steering committee meeting. That's where we talk about how we decide on what topics are good, who might be a possible speaker. But anybody's welcome to come. Opinions are welcome. Boing.
What was that?
Okay. The sysadmin list, that's the list of the people who are keeping the web server, the list server, the mail server, all that stuff running. So if you're volunteering to do some of that work, it shows you where the nuts and bolts are being done. So we'd love for more people to help on that. And what's next? Okay. We do record this meeting, the monthly general meeting with the 2 presenters. We record the STL Linux meeting, the LUUG meeting, which has the 1 presentation. And we keep those recordings in the archive. And so you can go to the homepage, and it's they're posted out there. You can click on it. We've also started adding them to YouTube. And even though those are our recordings, there's that warning on there. When you do stuff like this, even though we may say, oh, okay, our recording is turned off, or we'll edit that out. You got to remember, anything you say out here online, somebody else may be recording it as well. So we can't tell you what they're doing with their recording. We try and post those recordings within a day or 2. Basically do it as soon as we have enough fingers and toes to get it done. As I said, it is listed on our website, and only the general meeting and the LUUG meeting are currently being regularly posted. And a call for help before we go on. Anybody who has a question, you can ask it now, and hopefully we'll come up with a question, or we'll come up with an answer. Anybody break something? Anybody wonder if they broke something?
Oh, lots of things been broken, but we're not going there. I'll just say I'm a Unix admin, and I've spent the last week and a half dealing with a Windows problem.
Oh.
You have my sympathy.
You get to double your rate?
Yep.
Salary.
Oh boy. All righty. Well, not hearing any questions, as I said, it's usually time after our main presentation to continue on with some just general Q&A. So if you don't have anything now, maybe you'll have something at the end. Yeah, we do try and ask the presenters for if they have slides or scripts. We'll try and post that in the archive, and it'll be our presenter's choice whether to hold comments and questions to the end. I'll ask him that in a moment. And with that, I guess we'll move on to our presenter tonight. So, got a separate screen for that?
Nope. Just any further questions? If none, introduce the next speaker, please.
All righty.
I'm Steve.
Our next speaker is Stephen Lembark. And Stephen's going to tell us about control. And he's going to be doing it in the Bash shell. So it's a good Unixy type topic for tonight. I like it. So
and he was
repeat what
desperate
you
enough
said,
for a
you broke
speaker
up
that he
for a
called me
moment.
last week and said, help, help. How many, most of the people here, even if this is Unix, not the Linux group, do most people here use Linux? Everyone turn your mic, everyone unmute yourself. If you have questions or comments, just give them to me. But to most people, most people, Lee, I know, but most of you use Linux, I guess.
Yeah, of course we use Linux. I've
Well,
used
of
Linux
course.
for years.
I still know people that use Ultrix. I know a few people that still use OpenVMS.
And then
my first one was HPUX, but that was in the
Well, that's
90s.
one. So I guess most people use Linux. So Bash is the shell that you've got.
By the way, Steve, I didn't mean to ask the question. Do you want us to interrupt you with questions? And
Yeah, if you have questions, just ask.
Okay.
That's why I had everyone unmute themselves. Bash is also available on macOS. Mac recently replaced Bash as their standard shell with a thing called ZSH. That is just enough different from Bash that nothing will work right.
Steve, did you want your
Mhm.
slides to be showing now?
Yeah, they should be.
Or
I
not?
shared the screen. Let me share the screen again. Share screen.
As
Heck.
as a mixed ZSH Bash and KSH user, I've found
How the hell? Well, at least you're not trying to use C shell too, but
no, most basic things, command interaction works. When you start piping things together, you might run into some differences, and there are very much so some things ZSH supports that Bash either doesn't or does something completely differently.
yeah, and that's the problem you get if you try and get onto ZSH is that just enough of it is different than Bash that things, the syntax is the same, but the semantics are entirely different.
Still no sharing of slides.
People, wait a minute. I did
Oh.
this before and it friggin' worked. So
Right now, we are seeing Steve has started sharing a screen. Double click to enter full screen mode.
All I've got is a black screen.
I just have a black screen as well.
Black screen.
Okay, well, let me stop sharing and I'll share it again. Okay, so we click share the screen. We click select the window. We click entire screen. We click allow. And you people should see a browser and a small copy of LibreOffice and my desktop manager.
Black
Nope.
screen.
Black screen.
Black
There's a
screen.
thing that says you are viewing 'S screen.
Lee, wasn't this working before?
It was working before, yes.
Yes.
Remember when I said, let me go first? When it was working, that's when we share screen,
All we saw was the text.
select
I got-
window,
I got your picture.
entire screen, allow. So now it says I'm screen sharing, and I
This is
see a little thing that shows my entire screen.
Yeah, it says you're viewing Steve's screen.
It said
Well,
that
what
went away.
what it shows me that I'm sharing is one desktop, but it shows the entire desktop. So at this point, if I click slideshow from the first slide, click.
Is there an
what
option?
I
Is
see
there an option
is-
to show your entire screen versus an
That's what I did.
single
I
application?
showed, I selected entire screen.
Oh, interesting.
I did what I did last time when Lee said, hey, I can see your entire screen. I'm clicking screen share. There's a drop down. The bottom entry on it is entire screen. So I'm clicking that.
Well, that's not sharing anything.
Let me
And
see
I
if
click,
there's
I
something.
click allow. Now, at that
it's
point,
not-
I get a drop down that shows your screen sharing, and it shows a picture of a browser with a lizard and a ninja sword.
No, we're not seeing any of that. If it's not too much trouble, it might be beneficial to just leave the room and then come back, and sometimes that will get things working.
Hey, I've
If
identified
you strangle
myself.
the fucking poltergeists, I mean, that sometimes if enough of them die, the rest of them run off. But I'm doing new share.
I wonder, I think you and I, Steve, I think you and I both have exactly the same name on the screen. I've just got Steve.
Yeah, that's what I type.
Would
Yeah.
one of you please rename? I'm wondering if
How do
that's
you
causing-
rename?
Go up
You
to
might have to
go up
move-
to the left-hand corner where your name is and click on that. It should allow you to to rename.
When it
Yourself.
shows me I'm screen sharing, the thing it shows me, let's see. Do people see me sharing the screen now?
Nope.
Nope.
Because it shows me that I'm sharing the screen.
The black screen.
Steve,
Okay, I'm gonna exit this dumbass thing and try and get back in and see if that helps. Bye.
Use a different name, Steve. Use your last name.
Why don't you go ahead and change your name, Steve? And if you,
I don't have, when he says go in the upper left-hand corner and do this, that, and the other thing, I don't have that.
what I have found is my current screen layout, I see whoever's talking, and above that, little pictures or boxes with their names in it. When I hover over mine, I get a little 3 dot that I can click, and at the bottom of the 3 dot is rename.
Stand by.
No, I don't get that. Ah, wait a minute.
I changed it for you.
Can somebody hear me? Say yes or no, please.
Yes.
Yes.
No.
Gee,
no,
never mind.
it's like my test message. Please reply immediately if you do not.
I
receive-
renamed. I renamed.
I
Good, 'cause
renamed
I'm
myself.
SL, so it doesn't matter.
Mm.
Share the screen. Select a window. Entire screen. Allow.
You sound like you're getting
We can
frustrated.
see
ta-da!
something.
There you go.
We see the stuff.
Hey, all right.
Ask me why I don't use Zoom. Holy shit.
We
Okay,
know
so
why.
do people see a bunch of? Did people see a slide now?
Now you
Yes.
got to slide full
Yeah.
screen.
Absolutely.
Okay, so
I
strangling
think I got it
poltergeist
now.
did the trick. You kill those little suckers and things get better. Oops. So anyway,
If it was because you and I were using the same screen name.
I don't think so.
No.
Yeah,
It
it shouldn't, but
No, there's I tried sharing the screen earlier, and someone cut me off, and Zoom didn't reinitialize whatever it was after that. So anyway, Bash 5 came out a decade ago, more. If people are interested, one of the great things about the most recent version of Bash that's been out for a decade is and people don't know this and they don't use it, and it makes shell programming so much easier, is it supports, among other things, variable indirection. So I can store foo in a variable and look at the variable whose name is foo. So if anyone wanted to, I could do something on variables in Bash, part of my BSDM series. But
I think that would be interesting either later or a future presentation.
yeah, it'll be a future presentation if people care about it. But one of the neat things about the Born Again shell, and realize Stallman wrote this, so it is a pun, is job control. And that allows you to take jobs and have more than one of them running and actually manage them. Now, I know we've all done the thing of foobar ampersand and hit return. The problem is you do that enough times, and keeping track of what you got running can be a pain in the butt unless you know how to do this. So a process can be managed as what Bash calls a job. And the important thing about them is, notice I have a cat. The cat has been out of my office for the last 12 hours. As I begin speaking, the cat walks into the office and starts making noise. This is why we believe in Murphy. But the cute thing about processes, you can manage them. The first thing you can do is background them, which takes it and it gives you back a command line while the job is running. You can take something and say, okay, I don't want my command line anymore. I want to be back in that program that's running. So you can take an individual job that is running, and you can foreground 1 out of 20 of them. The other thing you can do, which is a lifesaver in some cases, you can stop them without killing them. So if you have something that's about to run out of space and waste 10 hours, you can stop it extend a file system and restart it and not waste the last 10 hours. So the ability to take something that is about to puke and fix the environment for it is a neat thing. Now, you couldn't do much of this unless you could tell what jobs you've got. So listing them and tracking whether they're successful, whether they failed, knowing which ones worked is another important thing. And it's reasonably straightforward to do this in shellcode. So you can have one thing that, let's say you're doing your daily backups. It's not hard to have one thing that backgrounds 8 different directories with CPIO pipe gzip -9, and the one big one gets xz -te or something. But then you can take each of them, check that they finished, and validate the fact. So looking at Bash, the Bash man page is incredibly detailed and incredibly terse. If you're going to dive into this, be prepared to reread it 14 times to get exactly what Stallman meant. But again, job control is, in Bash's view, the ability to take something, suspend it, resume it, and do that interactively. The kernel part of that is process management. Now, if you start up a single user copy of the kernel, if the old hack, if the rescue system is you set your init equal to bin bash. Okay, you're the running process. You're not going to have very good job control. So there's some situations in Linux where it doesn't support the job control because it isn't up and running fully. So you can't use some of this stuff in like single user mode. If you write scripts that use this, be prepared, and you want to be able to use them in rescue situations, be prepared to check whether the kernel supports what you need when you're going to be running it. And a process is a typo, but a process from the kernel's point of view is anything you can type out and hit return. You can take a pipeline, and the entire collection of stuff in the pipeline will be backgrounded if you background it. A single executable, a single shell command, a single shell script, any of those can be backgrounded and managed. So the example I'll use here, and this whole talk came from something I did at work, where we don't use PSQL, we use VSQL for Vertica. Now, as a side thought, how many people here have used Postgres or even know what it is?
I know what it
remember
is.
a talk on Postgres a couple of years ago that I still think about sometimes. It was a good one.
Okay, well, VSQL is Vertica. If you go to the PSQL site, one of the things they'll explain to you is that Vertica, Reddit, there are about 4 or 5 others, are high-end commercial databases that are based on PSQL. Vertica replaced the row store in Postgres with a column store to make it an OLAP database. But you can run the VSQL, and it's a copy of PSQL. All the backslashes work the same way. It's got the same PGPL-SQL programming language. So the example I've got here, though, was from taking a couple of tables. Now, one thing Postgres supports is the notion of external tables. So what we do to back things up is we put them in a standard format called Parquet that supports database operations and store them as flat files in S3. And you can treat the collection of S3 files as if it were a table and use SQL on it. So I can do something like select count 1 from this foo S3 archive table. And it turns out that this S3 archive table is really 14 Parquet files stuck on a network somewhere. It is not incredibly fast, but it is a pretty wonderful way to back stuff up because I can squish the crap out of it, stuff it up S3, pay next to nothing for it, And a year from now, if I have to query it, I still can without having to reload it from scratch. But in this case, somebody says, no, 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 I want it back. I want it back. It's too slow. So to stop the whining, we had to recover it. So we had 1 billion rows in one of these and 2 billion rows in another. And for various reasons, I can't show you exact counts, but this gives you the idea. Doing a select on these is going to take a while. What I'd like to do is restore these in parallel. This is going to take a few hours. I don't want to sit here watching grass grow for 2 hours and then come back and watch grass grow for 4 hours. So the trick here, I need to have 2 copies of PSQL running at the same time and be able to manage what they're doing. Does this make sense to people?
It's starting to. Keep going.
Glad you said that. So the first step, I want to background something. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to run PSQL. I'm going to do a bit of setup. I'm going to create a temporary table to load the data into. And now let's say that I just have a PSQL script that does an insert select and dumps things into the food temp table. Now I've started this and I watch it in Top or I watch it with Prometheus, and I can see that it's done 1,000 rows, and I can see that my cup of coffee is half empty, and I can see that at this rate, I might as well just go out and come back after dinner. I'd rather, again, not wait to run insert bar. I'd rather just get it started. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Control Z. Control Z if you're from India. And what'll happen now is I'm going to get a number plus and a stopped. What happened right now is that PSQL command has been taken off the run queue. The Unix process is still out there. It's just not running. It was given a SIG stop, TSTP, which is a transient stop. And that doesn't abort the process. It just takes it off the run queue. Did that make sense to people the way I said it?
Yes.
So this PSQL process is not dead, but it's not going to be put back on a core to execute until I do something else. Now, the things to notice that 1 and that plus sign are important. And I'll show you those in just a minute. So now I can ask, what do I have out there? The jobs command, not surprisingly, shows me what jobs are out there. And it'll show me 1 plus, and it'll show me stopped, which again tells me that from Bash's point of view, that PSQL is not going to accumulate any more CPU time. I haven't zapped it. It's still run a bull, but it's not going anywhere. Now I can type BG. BG, without any other arguments, backgrounded the last thing that was put into the background, which was the thing that had the plus sign on it when I listed the jobs. So now Bash shows me something. It shows me that little ampersand after it. That ampersand, which looks like what happens when you background something in the shell, says, okay, this is now running in the background. And now notice I've also got a shell prompt. I have a process running, doing something. Its terminal is redirected. If it tries to read from standard in, it will block until I foreground it. So Bash takes care of standard in, standard out, standard error, and dealing with that. Another important thing that it's done right now is this thing is backgrounded. It will ignore SIG hops. So if I get disconnected, it will survive. So now, because I'm at the command line, I can run PSQL again. I can execute my insert bar temp thing. And this is off and running, and I Control Z it. Notice here, I get 2 and a plus sign. So if I run jobs, I'll see that I have job number 1 and job number 2. Notice job number 1 has a dash on it and job number 2 has a plus on it. Again, that tells me that job number 2 is the last one that was put into the background. It's the last job that was stopped.
Ah,
Now, if I've got 16 of these and I foreground and background one, that plus sign might be next to job number 8. But right now, it's next to job 2. So I can tell that is what's going to happen if I run BG and don't give it a job number or a process ID.
ah,
So now when I type BG, it knows, you want the job that had the plus sign next to it. I will default to twiddling that one. And now that's running. Now, if I run jobs, bingo, I got 2 things running. Now, I can obviously run enough of these jobs that I overrun the virtual machine that's running Postgres and they all fight for each other with memory and they start swapping and thrashing. This doesn't magically make it so that you've got infinite resources to run all of these parallel jobs. But I can have these 2 right now. And again, I can see 2 of them and I can see that number 2 is the last one that was backgrounded. Even though it's running, that was the second one that was backgrounded. Now, if I went down and did a foreground of 1 and backgrounded it, the plus sign would be next to 1. Does this make sense so far?
yeah, actually it does.
Yeah,
Hey, here's
and-
Warp is Richard Stallman.
and it agrees with my experience. However, a couple of caveats. I do not believe simply backgrounding will protect a process from being killed when you log
Yes,
out.
it will. If you
My-
use an ampersand, it will not. If you use Control Z, Bash puts a SIG hup wrapper around it.
My experience is that does not work. I have had to
My
disown
experience
them.
has been using SSH and modems for 30 years with Bash. And again, that may depend on the system you're connecting to. There may be secondary things in firewalls or things in job management in Linux, where if you're, the things that kick you off of SSH if you don't type something for a certain amount of time, those kinds of things will zap these jobs. But if you read the Bash man page, and I've had this happen to me enough times, if your modem gets disconnected, you will get back into the system and find a running job.
Isn't there a
In fact,
no-hop
one thing
command?
I'll show later, there are applications that will reconnect you to the running job by mangling the controlling process of the process ID.
Isn't there a no-hop command that
You can use no-hup, but Bash automatically no-hups anything you have. On systems that have garbage collection for processes, and they say anyone who is disconnected isn't supposed to leave things running because that can be a massive security hole. If people you don't like can get into the system, start something and exit and leave that thing running, that is a security hole. And so a lot of systems are set up so that they won't just send the process a hup. If you get blocked out, they'll send it a term, wait 30 seconds, and send it a kill. Or a term, a quit and a kill. So they will do a shutdown sequence on it. But that's security software that overrides the normal SIG hup handling. In normal use Bash, if you Control Z something and use job control on it, it will put a wrapper around it. And the wrapper is in Bash. And it handles the hubs. So again, that may depend on what system you're using or how the kernel's compiled or something. But one of the reasons I loved Bash in the 1990s when we were all using 2400 baud modems and there was line noise is I could Control Z something, and if the modem connection went down, my job was still running. If
Right.
anyone cares, my phone just told me that Milton made landfall about 2 hours early.
I just tested this out. So I logged into Bach and I ran a sleep 60. And then I opened another shell and I did a pkill on SSH
Yeah.
on my local machine. So that way it killed my SSH connection from the for
Yeah,
my-
but that is okay.
And
But
then-
that's going to kill the process group. pkill is going to zap a process group.
Yeah, so I SSH from my local machine to Bach, and then on Bach I ran a sleep 60, and then I killed my SSH process on my local machine, right? Because I figured that simulates kind of like a lost connection.
But it doesn't.
Okay.
Why?
What you're doing there by doing a pkill of your SSH is it's going to zap the process group with a sig term, and a
Yeah,
sig
but-
term passed off to everything will zap everything.
The SIG term is on his client system, not the box server where he ran.
Oh, okay.
Right.
The box server, I don't know what Bach is, but the box server then is configured with something that propagates the disconnect. Because I last week I had something running and I got disconnected and I reconnected and it was there.
I'll say it this way. Test if
Yeah.
Control Z and background works, or if you need to do a disown before you bet the farm on it.
Yeah, that would be a good point. There may be secondary stuff set up to clean up.
What do you mean by disowned?
Disown, I can show you that later in the talk.
Thank you.
Disown detaches the process from your, it detaches the process from the original process group. And that means that if you get blasted with a SIG9, that job won't get blasted by it because it's in its own process group now. Disown is something it is the moral equivalent of what a lot of daemons will do when they wake up in the morning by forking, closing standard in, closing standard out, or reopening them to log files, putting in signal handlers to gracefully shut down, all that kind of stuff. Disown sort of if you know what process groups are, it just stuffs your job in a new process group. But yeah, let me keep going on this. But normally,
Please.
you will Bash will at least put a SIG HUP wrapper around what's going on there. It can't do more than that. If you're using PSQL for this, or most programs, PSQL, if you're at the shell, you can do a \O, which says send all of my output to a file. Now I can run it, stop it, background it, and now I can do a tail -F on the files, and I can watch everything happening. One of the neat things about that is that if you're using a long haul network, having these in the background streaming standard out to the screen is horribly slow, because the PSQL, if it's in verbose mode, is going to be putting all kinds of garbage to the screen that it has to wait because it does a write. So by putting this to a local disk file and then tailing the disk file, you can take a lot of latency out of execution, especially if the program is verbose. Things that use here scripts, where you're recording the output of the here script, is another good example where that can get really, really accelerated.
Redirecting output to a file is also very helpful when you're on a slow connection, like a 9600
Yeah.
serial.
Or pipe it through T, and then T is the thing that blocks, and it buffers the input. So job number one finishes. Getting back to job control. So what'll happen is when I'm looking at my tail, I'm going to see insert 0, a billion rows. Now, if I type jobs, I still see 2 of them are running. I can do a foreground. %1 is the argument that takes job number 1 and foregrounds it. Does that make sense the way I'm showing it?
Yes.
And that'll show me PSQL. Now, if you had PSQL and you gave it an argument like a different username, you would see a little bit more. It makes it easier to tell what's going on. It's up to you to remember what 1 and 2 actually mean. But right now, I'm talking to the PSQL executable that executed that first insert. Notice that I'll probably have to hit enter for a prompt, because PSQL wrote something to standard out, and foregrounding the thing, you can have problems with whether or not there's a pending new line that gets buffered or anything. So you hit return and bang, you're back at the shell prompt for that PSQL. And now I can do whatever I want. I can run something else. I can quit it. I can look at the table. I'm back in that same PSQL. It doesn't know it was background. It has no way of finding out. So now let's say I foreground %1 and I do an exit. So I've said, you know what? I'm done with this thing. Just let it go away. Now, if I do jobs, you'll see that job number 2 is still the one running. This is really, really important, people. Stopping exit. If one of these exits, the job numbers stay the same. Let's just say you had 45 of these things for I and 1 to something, do a find and a gzip to squash a bunch of directories and store the output. You might have jobs 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 through 19. If job 18 exits first, job 19 doesn't care. It's still number 19. The job numbers don't change. So that number 2 will be assigned to this for as long as that thing is running. If I start something new right now, I'm going to get a new job number 1. But that job's number 1 won't change even if this number 2 exits. And that's really important because it means you can tell which jobs to foreground and background over the life of your session. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and again, one of the problems you get if your connection gets lost, if you and the other system doesn't garbage collect you. If you get zapped, that PSQL is running on the other side. It has an artificial signal handler on its read that stops the thing if it tries to do a read from standard in. That's just part of Bash's job management. It has buffering for standard out. It has its standard error still gets redirected, so you probably you'd see error messages, but they've got nowhere to go. Did that make sense?
Yeah, what happens to those messages again?
Normally standard out gets buffered, standard error gets passed straight through because you want to see errors. But normally, if you're doing this, you're going to redirect standard out and standard error in some way that you can manage them. The important thing to notice is there's the notion of a controlling terminal is part of Unix. And the idea that there is a process that is the parent of this that owns it. And if you get zapped, all of these backgrounded processes may still be running, but you are no longer connected to them. If you SSH back into the system, then you'll have a problem because there's nothing to foreground and background. They're not your jobs anymore because you have a new process, a new copy of the bash shell. And that new copy of the bash shell has no idea what this old copy of the bash shell was running. They're two different processes. They're disconnected. So if I go back in and I SSH back in and I do jobs, I don't see 1 or 2 or anything. I see nothing because I haven't run anything yet. So one fix if you get disconnected, there's Repter. What this will do is it'll play games. You have to be the same user ID that had the old thing so that you can do process management on it. But it goes in under the hood and it basically reattaches your current terminal as the controlling terminal for the old bash processes and reattaches them to your process. So at that point, you can do a Repter on a process ID and you can be back in control of it. If you do a lot of remote work, having this installed on the machines, if you background processes, can be a real time saver. Another thing, if you have SQL, do an exit as your last statement. Know that you're going to start it, you're going to make sure it's running, and that it will exit on its own. And then you don't have to be there to kill it. If you're going to, if you background something, you can put a \Q and then hit Control Z. So the next time this thing tries to read from standard in, it's going to hit your \Q and quit. You can also put a \Q at the end of your a here script or a PSQL script. You can do an exit. If you have a here script that you're pushing into PSQL, you can start a PSQL double less than something and put a whole bunch of stuff into it, and then the end tag, hit return. PSQL is running, but it's reading standard in from this thing. If you do a Control Z, you can background it. But then if you go out of your way to put an exit or a \Q at the end of your here script, PSQL will exit gracefully when it's done. So that's, again, if you get zapped, if you're on a system that allows the processes to continue running, then Bash will manage the life of that process, and then it'll see it exit and clean up after it. Now, if you're on, you've logged back in, and that PSQL is there, and you can see that it's just sitting there doing nothing, I can do a pgrep, I can find the process, and I can kill minus term it. PSQL, most programs that run on Unix, Bash is one of them, Postgres is another, will exit gracefully at the first opportunity if you do a kill minus term. Don't use a kill -9 in this case, because you have no idea how much damage you're going to do if you just abort the process in midlife. Let the program's own term handler deal with the situation and exit gracefully. If you don't like running two things, you can do a pkill minus term PSQL, and that will take every process that you have access to. If you and I are different user IDs, pkill will not even attempt to kill my process because you don't own it. You have to be the same user ID or the super user to blast other people's processes. So
Question.
pkill, if you haven't used it before, and pgrep are really, really nice for this. What?
That dash term, is that a specific kill number signal? Or
Yeah, you know what? I stopped memorizing the terminal numbers. Kill -9 is the same as kill minus kill. Do yourself a favor and learn the damn names.
okay.
Term, quit, kill in that order. A SIG term says when you're finished with the thing you're doing now, please exit gracefully. SIG-quit says gracefully abort whatever you're doing and get the hell out before I blast you. Kill minus kill just takes the process ID and blows it off the run queue, buffers and all. The sequence of term followed by quit followed by kill is what's used during a normal system shutdown on Unix, Linux, Starnix, Ultrix, Solaris. That's been since the days of EDPs. It does a term, it does a time, it does a quit, it does a much shorter time, and it does a kill minus kill. Kill -9 is kill.
Minor nitpick. Re-PTR or whatever, and the pgrep, pkill, etc. are not always included with default installs.
They're usually not.
Yeah. So
you have to have a competent sysadmin. Bitch and whine until you get both of them. pgrep is wonderful for just monitoring things because you can use a pgrep -a and you can give it a regular expression. I can type quote PSQL .star and a database name, quote, and hit return. And I'm going to see all the PSQLs attached to that database, even if I don't own them.
Mhm.
So pgrep uses grep regular expressions to search. You can search the entire process string. And you can tell everything you know about it. Actually, that should have been pgrep -f, my mistake. But pgrep by default just greps up process IDs. It saves you from PSAUX pipe grep something. It allows you to grep whatever you would have grepped without having to run PS and pipe it. And it's got a bunch of niceties for ignoring things that are backgrounded or foregrounded or whatever. pkill uses pgrep to find things that it then blitzes with your signal. But again, it's nice because if I do a PS and pipe it to kill minus term, I can blast all sorts of things that I don't own or I don't want to. So because I can use a more complex regular expression instead of just PSQL, I can say blow off all the database connections to this particular database where somebody's doing something stupid. So yeah, these may not be installed. pgrep and pkill are pretty common these days. Reptor is you're going to have to go out of the way and supplicate for someone to install it or put it in on your own machine.
It's
I
highly
run
dependent-
Gen 2, I can install it in one line.
Yeah, it's highly dependent on the platform.
Yeah.
Linuxes and BSDs, it's almost trivial to install these. You start looking at Solaris or AIX or, God forbid, HPUX or SCO Unix, getting pgrep, pkill, various other
pgrep will still work. pkill's a bitch.
The split face mallet. What in the world?
getting those utilities installed becomes a lot harder.
Yeah. Well, the problem is that most of the stuff was written, everything's been written on Linux for the last 10 years. And the libraries are different. The library locations are different. The shared object libraries are different. The interfaces are just enough different to drive you nuts. If you're dealing with Ultrix or Sonos, which are basically out of the box BSD, things will tend to work because it's BSD. If you're going on AIX or HPUX that are thin interface layers between a Unix-ish front end and the vendor's old back end, AIX is an old not mainframe but mid-size OS, and an HPUX, I forgot the name of it, was HP's own original small computer, and all I did is add interface layers. So when you start working on those and try to do some of the stuff, the bash stuff will work. If bash will compile, it will work properly. That's one of the reasons a lot of the GNU code is so frickin' big, is it will run gracefully on pretty much anything Starnixy that's ever been released. But pgrep also is more likely to work on odd systems than pkill, just because the semantics of stopping a process. Not everyone supports the same definition of a process group that Linux does.
I've also found that the basic job control, foreground, background jobs, and ampersand and the like work in just about any shell written from the 90s forward.
Yeah, because they're all based on bash.
No, they're not. Many of them are. Not all of
They
them.
They were based on. Oh.
C shell has its own form of job control. It's just different commands.
Yeah, but I mean, a lot of the people, bash became pretty much the standard shell for a lot of things, and most hackers used it. So what you found is they tried to make whatever they did look bash-ish. Even if the back end is completely different, they wanted the finger feel.
Oh.
There was a comment earlier, Sean had done a search for that Reptor command and couldn't find any reference to it.
Search for REPTY.
Well, if you look it up, REPTR is where you'll find the project and its downloads.
Thank you.
And then, whatever it's called on your system. Now, there are a couple of things you can play around with, and I'll get done, is if you're managing jobs, if you do a Control Z, you can foreground different things. You can foreground a job name. Oh, and so let's say, I apologize. There's a typo in this page too. Instead of foreground VS, that would be PSQL. So you could foreground %PS, and you would foreground the last job backgrounded whose executable began with PS. Or I can type PSQL sum script, and I can do foreground. You see that %? That will search for some job I have that has that string in the command line. This is really sexy if you run something that does, for I in /home/jar find $I, pipe gzip -9v greater than a backup file. Because I can do a jobs and I can see 15 of these running, and I can say, wait, this idiot, he just downloaded a 14 gigabyte file. I don't want to back that up. And I can foreground %? Joe Blow, some part of the path, and I can foreground the process that has that path in its command line. Did that make sense?
Yeah, strangely enough, it does.
Yeah.
So the %? If you background a lot of stuff and it's left running, and you're careful about making sure that the command line for each of them has got something unique on it, a path that it's backing up, a database that it's connecting to, whatever, for I in something, if you put $I on the command line, then if you can do a job and you can see that string in the job output, you can foreground based on the name and not have to keep track of the numbers. This is really sexy if you're programming something, because you can stick what you're doing onto an array in Bash, walk down the array and check if those jobs are running, because you can either foreground or background or check the job status based on %? A path or a database or whatever you use to start it with. If you do a foreground, yeah, if you do a foreground, if you type %1, if you look up here, you see I did a foreground %VS, or I did a foreground %1. If I background this PSQL job, I can just type %1 and hit return. Or again, I apologize, that should have been PS. If I type whatever the process is, or %? Sum script, the assumption is if you're typing a job specifier by itself, Bash can see the leading %, and it uses that to foreground whatever's in the background that matches whatever you asked for. And you'll get, if you do %? Something and there are 18 of them, it'll foreground. My recollection is it foregrounds the first one, but don't shoot me if I'm wrong. I think it'll do the first one, and then you can do that, exit it, and it'll do the next one. So you can have a shell loop that foregrounds things and causes them to exit. Now, again, % is the last thing that was stopped. %+ is the last backgrounded. So if I do a Control-Z, whatever I Control-Z'd will be brought, if I do a foreground %%, that will take whatever I Control-Z'd and bring it to the foreground. If I backgrounded something, that the last job that was backgrounded is the job that has the plus sign next to it in jobs. So if I do an FG %+, I will take the last thing that BG affected and I will bring that thing to the foreground, which again is really handy if you're jumping between 18 of these things trying to manage them or watch what's going on. You can BG something, foreground something else, do it, Control-Z it, background it, and go back to the same one you did. The last one you did will come up. And as always, there's for bedside reading, if you do a man on Bash, you can look for process control, and it will describe most of this. But again, that the bash man page is extraordinarily dense. It's pretty damn thorough, but you have to pay attention to every single word in it. I'm not kidding. There are little shoulds and cans and oughts and shalls, and you have to really think about it, because to make the thing fit into memory in the 1990s, Stallman condensed it to the point where just every piece of punctuation is important and everything matters. Learning the Bash Shell 3rd edition is ancient, but it's an excellent book and it has lots of examples. It's available online. If you go to O'Reilly.com, go into the learning section. The first 10 books are free. 20 years ago, when the old system Safari Books Online, they weren't getting enough people joining it. Everyone wanted the free stuff. So they had a trick that if you paid them the unlimited subscription this year, they would never raise the price ever. So I have been paying $179 a year for an unlimited access to that. And it's been very much worth it. If you're into databases, they've got every book that CJ Date ever published. They've got lectures by CJ Date. If you can handle database lectures by a mathematician who looks like a mathematician and sounds like a mathematician, Date's lectures are amazing. But the Bash Shell is great. If you go to DuckDuckGo, learning the Bash Shell, you'll get a bunch of books, bunch of everything from YouTubes to man pages to HTML. It depends on how you like to learn things. But I would always start with the Bash man page. It just for the reason that it's what Stallman thought was correct. So if anything in Bash does something else, it's a bug in Bash. Anyone else can tell you what they think Bash ought to do, but Stallman is telling you what he programmed it to do. So when Stallman in the man page says that he's wrapping the thing in a SIGHUP handler, then they expect that to be the case. The Linux system may override that, but that's where it's at. And that's it. Any questions? Any Rotten Tomatoes?
Did you cover the no-hup thing?
No-hup, basically, if you do a man on no-hup, well, let's do a man on no-hup. People can see my screen, right?
Yes.
Yep.
And by the way, if you use one of these multi-tabbed Xterm thingies,
Can't
they're
read
doing the
that.
same.
Control plus a couple times.
Options. Select by font.
Keep going. That's better.
Now my terminal is so friggin' big that it no longer fits. Hang on.
That's here.
Well, no, it's off the screen. Let me get it back on the screen so that we can see all of it. I should have smallified this thing before I increased the font size. There we go. Now I can shortify it so that it's a reasonable number of lines long. But yeah, making the text 14 times larger increases the window size. There we go. Click. So now what no-hup does is you run no-hup with a command. That's it. And what it does, it's an executable that has a signal handler. And it has a signal it does a sig ignore on the hup signal and then fork execs whatever you wanted. and returns with the exit status of whatever you ran. If a terminal, it'll redirect it from an unreadable file. So SIGHUP takes care of making it so that standard in does not return, it doesn't want to return a HUP if you get disconnected, because standard in is not a controlling terminal. It'll try and do no hup.out in your current directory, otherwise your home directory no hup.out. Beware of no hupping something that does per line output if whatever you're doing is big, because you can end up filling up your home directory with a no hup.out. So yeah, I would recommend you do something like no hup something greater than a file, 2 greater than ~1. No hup in bash is built-in. There are a couple of useful exit commands for it, so you can tell why it puked. And it's one of the core utilities. It's been around since the early 90s. I mean, since GNU core utils. But again, what a HUP is, HUP goes back to the days of TTYs, like real TTYs, like teletype units going katunka, katunka, katunka. And you used to connect to the to the terminal, and a HUP was sent, depending if it was a 422 or a 232 connection. If you lost the terminal, like the wire went down, the hardware generates a HUP signal. The same thing would happen if you used a modem. HUP means hang up, and it came from the days when terminals ran on modems to connect across the street to a computer. So the HUP signal stands for hang up, like on hook. Today, if you're using SSH, obviously HUP is a meaningless term, but it's the same signal. It's a kill -1, and it's basically
it's not meaningless. HUP is usually a graceful way to cause some.
No, but the name HUP, the name HUP doesn't. You don't hang up when you kill something on SSH. You exit. It comes from the HUP HUP name.
I'm
For
aware.
the signal comes from the days when you actually were using modems and TTYs that were plugged into terminal ports, and a wire went dead.
I'm very well aware of that. That's not what I was talking about.
Yeah, but that's what I was saying about HUP. The HUP, SIGHUP is a wonderful way to stop things, because it generally is the most graceful way to shut something down.
So not only will it doesn't always shut things down either. Some daemons like Gettys, when you send a HUP to them, they will cause connections on them usually to gracefully exit, but the daemon itself stays running and often can be told to repeat its configuration.
And the same is true if you use a lot of daemons, because they have no controlling terminal. SIGHUP was used as a placeholder for restart. Starman, a lot of web servers. If you HUP the server, it will drop all open connections, kill all of its forked services, and then refork the pre-fork count.
To Hurricane Helene, the damage is devastating. I'm going to give you some of the numbers here. Imagine if
the hell.
Somebody's had an open mic that's had a lot of noise tonight. Sounds like pinging and various things, or TV.
Oh, the ping is me, man. That's I can't really mute myself. That's my wife telling me she wants me to go out and get Chinese food.
She
Hang on.
sounded
Let me
kind of
just tell her.
desperate there a couple of times.
I thought that was a sonar signal on your phone.
That's what it is. I got sick of the built-in noises everyone else has. You can't tell who's
Yeah.
hang on.
Huh. Yeah,
Yeah,
that was
that's why I use the screaming monkeys for my ringtone.
If it's on your phone, can you place your phone further away from your microphone?
It's Not really. We're almost done, so it won't. But I've told her that I'm still giving the talk, so she won't be bothering us. But the yeah, the sonar ding is nice because it's something you actually hear. Even if the phone's in my pocket, I can hear I got a message. But no hup, you give it a command, you give it command with arguments, whatever your command line is, it does a sig ignore on hup and then fork execs things and tries to redirect the output so that it doesn't spew all over the terminal and get lost. That is one nice thing about using nohup versus control Z is it tries to create the nohup.out file. The problem is you can have, if you background 14 things with nohup, all of them will end up going to the nohup.out file and you get completely jumbled output. So if you're going to be backgrounding things and you're not going to be foregrounding them as interactive when you're done, it's usually a good idea to redirect them to a flat file somewhere else so that they have their own file. But that's what NoHub does. And it's nice again because if you get disconnected, if your session exits, the processes don't get blitzed. But
Had that fail.
But anyway, yeah, if the O'Reilly book on learning Bash covers the variables, it covers job control, and you can look this stuff online. But that was the talk. Was that helpful to anybody?
Oh, yeah.
Quite a bit.
Very
Okay.
much.
Yeah, Bash, it's one of those things that a lot of people don't use most of the features.
I've used foreground background for years. I just didn't know that it could be that extensive and
Yeah, that's the
controlled
thing.
that way.
Yeah, you do the foreground background, you don't think about it much. Most of the time, most of us have got one process that we backgrounded. You did something, you control Z'd it, you went off, you came back. And you don't think of any of this stuff because FG and BG take the last process stopped and the last process backgrounded as default. So you don't think about doing all the job control. It starts to make a lot more sense, for example, if you're playing around on Amazon and you're working on a system that doesn't have a tabbed terminal, you can, without having to resort to term and switch between all the terminals and get lost, you can have one connection and manage all the jobs from one connection. It's primitive in the sense that you don't have separate tabs and you can't rename them and you can't just click something on the screen and it comes up. You got to actually pay attention to what you're doing. But for the most part, it's fairly straightforward to use. So anyway, that was Gary. What I'm going to do is I'll stick this on my speaker deck site once I've fixed the remaining typos.
Yep.
And then anyone wants to, if you look up speaker deck /Lembark, you'll find me. I'm kind of giving up on SlideShare because you have to be a member of LinkedIn to download anything. Once Microsoft bought it, they started screwing it all up. So the SlideShare stuff is there because I've got links to it. But Speaker Deck is where I'm putting things now.
Excellent.
And if people are interested, if you, well, yep, I did it right.
Oh, hey, that link to learning the Bash shell
Yeah.
that you had on the screen just a few seconds ago.
Yeah.
Would you cut and paste that into the chat, please?
Yeah, if you go to O'Reilly, yeah, but I can do that. A quick thing is, this is the stuff you can do to environment variables. Defaults, you can assign things, you can blow up if they don't exist. You can say if this is set, pick something else. You can do substrings. You can find a list of all the variables matching a prefix. So like for Postgres, where all the variables that it uses are PG something, you can get a list of all of them, and it's really easy without having to hardwire the variable names. You can list all the PG variables that are set. You can actually strip prefixes and suffixes. So I can take a word and I can find the shortest or longest prefix or suffix that matches it. So I can have star something. I can strip everything up to a word. You can do pattern substitution for the beginning or from the end. You can have things play with the case. So you can, one of the classic things you want to do is uppercase or lowercase the contents of a variable because you're comparing it to something. So you can do case modification. You can take any dollar thing and you can do an @ sign, and you can all the lowercase converted to uppercase, the first converted to uppercase, upper to lower, as a string that is quoted in a format that can be reused. This was stolen straight from Perl \Q. And it allows you to take an input string and then munge it so that if you put it into double quotes, it will expand back to the original string with tabs and single quotes and double quotes and escapes, all escaped out properly so that you don't have to. And this one deals with / escape sequences. So it'll correctly handle \n and t. You can do prompt string. I mean, all this kind of stuff. So these things can make it really easy to process. You could do a lot of processing if you take what is it, dollar bang prefix.
Sorry about that.
You're allowed to breathe. There is one of these, I forgot, I never use it. You can actually take a parameter and use it as an indirect reference, and that's a separate section. But it allows you to do a fairly lightweight form of object-oriented programming in Bash. Because you can take a variable and take the name of the variable and use it to reference a variable with that name. So you can have an array of variable names, and you can indirectly access all of them to get the contents of what looks kind of like an object.
Now that's in the Bash manual. What section is that under?
Oh gods.
Expansion.
Thank you. Yeah.
Indirect expansion, dollar parameter.
That's close enough. Thank you. Thank you.
Dollar bang name.
Okay.
If I set So if I set foo equal to bletch and bar equal to foo, foo will tell me bletch, and dollar bang bar will take the contents of the variable bar, which is foo, and expand this to dollar brackets bar foo, which is bletch. So
And just because you can doesn't mean you should.
No, I'll show you a good example. No,
There's
I'll show you a
blood
good
coming out of
example.
my ear.
No, I'll give you a good example. Postgres uses a bunch of environment variables. So I can say one of the things I can do is I can look up a list of the, and $:dash is the first one of these, so I know where it is. This, if I do a $bang prefix star, let's say, or $bang prefix at, this will give me a list of environment variables whose name looks like that. So I can do an env pipe grep pg, and I see, or grep up caret pg, and I see these variables. I can also say echo $bang pg star, and I will see those same variables. Does that make sense? If I do this, they'll be separate words. If I do this, and I type it properly, I can list out a bunch of environment variables for Postgres in one step. I don't have to hardwire them. I don't have to deal with which ones are empty or not defined. I just say, fine, these are the ones that we have. Deal with it.
I had a different use case for the indirection at my last job. We were doing something where we needed to read a password in interactively, which you can do with read, but the security people involved did not want a static variable name. So we randomly created a variable.
And then stored it in a variable.
Yes, and then it indirectly referenced using the variable that held the other variable's name.
Yeah, this is also really nice if you have a configuration file that gets sourced into the environment, because you could look for things that are defined in the configuration file and just display access or just display for somebody, this is what your configuration file gave you. If you use a consistent prefix like PG, you can display or access or say, gee, this is what you defined, this is what you're missing. So it's also really kind of nice for error messages. If you want to dump out a bunch of variables that affect a particular program, you can store a list, for I in, list of variables do something, and it will dump each of them out of the environment for you. This is most useful for systems programming where you're running other people's code, because then you can have them define things that you use to drive their execution. But if I don't go get the Chinese food in the next few minutes, they're going to be closed.
All right. Well, let's see. Everybody think of any final questions you may have before our speaker leaves. Before that, though, I'm going to ask our speaker to please once again run the command.
No, the first thing I'm going to do is call the restaurant and order the Chinese food.
Okay.
After that, I've got 15 minutes before it's ready.
Okay. Okay.
Oh, come on, pick up, pick up, pick up. Oh, come on, folks.
Gary, I suggest we shut down the recording.
I know, not till after we do the questions. Oh, well, you can pause the recording, I guess.
This meeting is being
No, it's
recorded.
workhorse computing. But anyway,
Workhorse computing. I'm sorry. So you didn't put that in the environment or in the variable name.
No, there's this. That's how you find me.
There we go.
Workhorse.com. From the good old days when having 8-character domains was considered impolite. No, think about it. Who were the first companies that had domains? HP.com, ATT.com, IBM.com. There weren't many of them were more than 4 characters.
Yeah.
And so I had to think of, and the problem was back then it made the bang paths in UUCP too long. So I try to, workhorse is that's the least number of characters that when you try and say it out loud, it comes out workhorse.
Cool. Neat. Okay.
So I've had that email since the 90s. I had a UUCP connection. The guy at Occidental College, I helped him set up some of the oddities in SendMail for bridging UUCP to TCP. And so he used me as a guinea pig for his network to UUCP connections. And in trade for that, I got a free mail forwarding through UUCP to him. So I could use the @workhorse.com, and it ended up getting routed to him, and then it would come back to me through UUCP every day.
I love it. I was just talking to somebody the other day, and I was describing to them how UUCP used to work here in St. Louis. Okay, so
well, it still works. There's still places using it. When I used to travel, the people that ran when I lived in Houston, the people that ran my internet service, I had a dial-up connection to them, and I had to get into my own computer to get my mail.
So Stephen's next talk for us in a few months will be UUCP's connection.
Yeah, oh gods no. But the funny thing was they had a key to my apartment. And I was working in Chicago, and they would come, after a storm, after the weather flaked out, they'd be nice. They would come and they restart the computer for me if it didn't restart itself.
Yeah.
And I spent a week I'd lived on a raised floor for a week. I looked like shit. I felt like shit. I flew back to Houston and just took a week off. And I was in the shower just getting hot water, and I hear a knock on the door. Screw off, people. I'm taking a shower. And then I hear, "This is the constable, sir. You do need to open the door." Constable? What the? Wrap a towel around myself, walk downstairs holding a towel, and there's the apartment manager didn't know me because they had changed managers. And she saw the other people coming and going and had no idea why I went into the apartment.
Oh.
That's him. Arrested me, broken. Oh my God, what's he doing? Can we see your ID, sir? Well, constable, I'm going to have to go get it. As you can see, I might not have it on me. Yes, I understand that, sir. No, arrest him, get him out of here. So I walk back and I show him the ID, and it's got this address with my picture on it. And the guy says, "But this is the address, ma'am." "Who the hell is he? Who are those other people?" "Oh, they run my ISP. They turn my computer on when the power goes out." The constable had no idea what this meant. He was a constable in the 1990s. No one knew what ISPs were. But the fact that that was me and my name was the one, and it was this address, kind of shut her up for the time being. You can finish your shower, sir. Thank you very much, constable.
Oh God. Hey, Steve.
Anyway,
I think you're gonna miss the restaurant if you don't get a move on.
Yeah, I got a haul ass. I will catch everyone later. Have fun, and I'll get this on speaker deck corrected hopefully tomorrow.
All righty. Thank you very much, Stephen.
Have fun.
Thanks, bud.
Thank you. It's been great. Wonderful.
Okay, turn recording back on. Actually, we should have had it on all along.
It was back on.
Okay, good. All right. Let's see. There was a comment made out in the chat. Wikipedia says that Chet Ramey developed Bash, not Stallman. So Stephen is
Wikipedia is always right, isn't it?
Right.
Oh yeah.
Anyway, someday we'll find out if Stephen has a rejoinder to that. But let's see. Did we miss anything else in chat here during the?
I didn't.
Where does Stephen live? What town?
Oh, Stephen now lives in, is it Pittsburgh?
Somewhere on the East Coast.
I think it's it's in Pennsylvania. I think it's Pittsburgh. I think.
Oh. I know one guy that lived in Pittsburgh. If you ever knew one guy that lived in Pittsburgh.
he can do a lot of his work from anywhere where he can get a connection, and he can certainly fly places to do things. And his wife is more tied to an actual job. So when she gets a job in a different city, he moves.
Yeah, I guess it, if all his work is over the network, I guess,
Bookend.
Let's see. There was also a chat entry from Sean about Reptr, REPTR. Oh, you were Googling it, and then you actually found it out on GitHub. Okay.
Oh, does Sean want to display the updates on the new website, or is that too much?
You want to record that or go ahead and stop it?
Yeah, I'd say go ahead and record it.
Okay.
Yeah, let me just, this will be fast. Recording it or not doesn't matter to me, but so Stan asked me to make a couple changes on the website, so I have them on my local, and we can take a look. So all right, so Stan provided this logo
Transparent.
with the transparent background. I'm having a hard time zooming in on it, but on the dark, it doesn't look, because we got black on gray,
Yeah.
so it's hard to see it. I think in the light mode, let me switch. In the light mode, it looks fine.
Oh, that's exactly what I want. Yes.
The light mode looks fine, but if anybody's using dark mode or dark reader, it's going to be a bit hard to see it. And then I also added this red bar that Stan asked for across the top here. We, if we like that, we can keep it. And then also he asked me to make the zoom button stick out a bit more. So like the zoom button only appears if the meeting is in the future or one day ago. And so now it is red. So I think that'll stand out a bit more when all the other buttons are blue. And then if you click on the meeting, you see this big banner here that says to connect. So I mean, it's pretty hard to miss this huge yellow banner here.
Yeah.
You want to connect that. Is there anything else black on this screen that disappears when you're in dark mode? You might.
No, I hope not. I kind of want to make sure that. Go ahead. Sorry.
You might put that. Oh God, like that Unix under the gateway arch. You might put that Unix or Linux, whatever that is. You might put that in yellow. That way, it would show up whether you're in light mode or dark mode.
Yeah. Stan, what do you think about that? You think you can make some more edits to that thing and we can get it on there, or you want to just ship it?
I mean, it works fine if the background is light blue.
Yeah, but nobody in Linux world uses a black background.
I hate the black background. I find it more difficult for me to read stuff with the background, believe it or not.
Really?
Yeah, for me, I don't like it.
Well, all I suggested was if you change that to yellow, it'll show up on a white background or a black background.
Depending on the yellow, it can be hard to read on a white. I would actually wonder if you can do an outline in white or light, kind of like how on the right-hand side, the white is outlined in black and it's still easy to read when it's in light mode.
Okay, that's fine. Just change it to something that shows up.
Well, the reason on the light representation like he has it now, the reason I wanted the red bar across there with that blue back block down below is it's very similar to the current website, so that when we do completely transition, it'll look quite familiar, and it won't look like somebody just threw a hand grenade in there or something. I mean, that looks close enough to the original site or the current site that it's I find it's not jarring if you put it one way.
That's a good idea.
Okay, now for that works, this all works for the light background. As what we're gonna do with the black background, we'll have to work on that, I guess.
Sean, do you know if CSS selectors have any information based on light versus dark background?
Yeah, of course. But this, yeah, if this was like an SVG, I could probably, well, no, not with that.
No, it's a
But-
PN, it's a
Yeah, but
PNG.
it's a PNG, so CSS can't reach inside the PNG and
No, no, I'm talking about having two different versions, one that's light background friendly, one that's dark background friendly, and use CSS to pick which one is displayed.
Oh, I think I can do that. We don't do that anywhere else, but I think I could make that work probably.
I wasn't aware you could use CSS to modify things in an SVG.
Not in, but the background, like the transparent behind it.
Oh, yeah. So if you have an alpha channel, the background shows through.
And actually you can, well, okay, I don't want to speak on this turn. I'm pretty sure you can modify an SVG too, because I've seen things like the Twitter logo and stuff. Actually, that's what I did for like these logos down here. I told it what color to be, and these are all SVGs because this is the same colors like our links and stuff. So you can color these SVGs somehow. I'm not sure if it's using CSS though, to be honest, but I mean, I think it has to be. Or else, surely they don't have one of these for every single color in the color picker. So anyway, but yeah, I already have the meeting up for, and then this is what it looks like now, just to see the contrast so we can compare them. So this is the current, and then this is with the changes that Stan wants to see, and I'll do it in light mode as well. This is the current, and this is the changes. Oh, apparently I'm not zoomed in all the way, so current changes. So
That works for me. And we'll have to work on the black, you know, or you can, if you can work out the suggested CSS change or CCS or whatever it is.
well, yeah, just give me a new, change the logo however you want to see it on the black background, and I'll do the work I'll figure out how to.
I have no idea how to make it look better on the black. I mean, I, like I said, I don't like the black background. I find it very difficult to deal with.
Okay.
I can try. I'm flexible, you know, I'll try. I'll see what I can do. I'm not sure.
All right. Yeah, but I was thinking if you could provide a logo, then I'll see what I can do as far as choosing one if it's dark and the other one if it's light.
If I change the black stuff to a light blue or a white, would that work on there?
Yeah, it's worth a shot, right? I think that's
Okay.
worth a shot. And then
Okay, I'll do that.
Steve
And
Beckman was suggesting yellow would be a good color that would work either way. Okay.
Depending on the yellow you use, it can start disappearing into white.
Well, why don't you make it white like the lug logo?
That'll work.
or light blue.
Well,
with
show up
whatever,
a background.
whatever the
Lee.
logo is here, it's white.
Whatever.
Yeah, make it look like that. Except take the without the penguin. Wouldn't that be simplest, Stan?
Flip this thing to white background, will you? Yeah, why not just do it like the penguin logo in the upper right-hand corner? Just make it
Okay.
like that. It shows
Okay,
up.
all right, I'll take a shot at it, okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
One of my favorite techniques that's very stylish now is to have a light gray background and have text that is maybe one shade darker than the background, sort of like right over here on the left side. God, I hate that. That's just devilishly hard to read.
Is that
No.
the way Apple does everything?
Pardon?
Is that the way Apple does everything?
Everybody does it.
Good
As soon
God,
as
it
Apple
sucks.
does it, everybody copies them.
Sucks.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, you can't tell me that's a good idea if you want people to be able to read it easily. There's no way I'm going to believe it. I'm not that stupid.
A lot of times I have to highlight something and cut and paste it somewhere because it's so darn pale.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So maybe we ought to at least try and get our own website not to do that. Is there a way to control? No, I get you can't. I don't think you can do that with a browser.
Finish your question. Is there a way to what?
Is there a way to control font color that'll override whatever the author of the web page put in there?
Sure, it's called Dark Reader.
Different web browsers have different options for that. Netscape has had the ability to set foreground, background, and the option to override whatever the web page wanted for a long time. What I have started seeing more people do is they'll use various different extensions to modify the CSS on the fly. So it changes to whatever you want and still looks relatively decent.
Yeah. Now, Lee, you mentioned Dark Reader. Is that?
It's a plugin for Firefox. I found it about 10 years ago. I've been using it ever since.
Okay.
What do you
Anybody got anything like that for Brave?
You know me, I hate Brave.
Well, you're welcome to like it or dislike it.
What's
Well,
Brave? Isn't
and-
Brave based on older Firefox code?
Pardon?
Isn't Brave based on older Firefox code?
No, it's a fork of Chrome.
Or Chromium.
Chrome is in the public domain. Google did that. At least some version of it, and they forked that. That's how they get Brave.
I couldn't remember what it was based on.
Yeah, same thing Microsoft does with Edge. They build their own custom version for it based on the open source code.
Yeah. Well, the thing I like about Brave is it gets rid of, you don't have to any add-ons, no, you don't have the problem of websites puking when they see that you're running no script. And
yeah, but there's so much other crap in there. It drives me fruit.
Well,
you gotta collect points.
Points? Never heard of that.
Brave points or Brave bucks, whatever they do.
What's that for?
Yeah,
I don't know.
They have a cryptocurrency built into their web browser. It's
Oh, good God.
yeah.
I don't care about that.
Well, anyway, Gary, let's what happened to our Q&A anyway?
Hey, Rick, what do you think about this? What do you think about, because Stan was talking about the red, what do you think about making all the links red versus blue? Preference?
Better.
Makes it harder to read.
That's better.
Blue is easier to read, yeah.
Alrighty.
Hey, Sean, maybe make your Zoom links yellow. They'll show up better.
Yellow. Okay. I thought, yeah, okay. I will.
Because if you pick the right yellow, it'll look good on dark R light.
Well, yeah. Okay. I just think it matches. It kind of matches the bar.
Yeah.
With the same red, but I don't really care. I can make it yellow.
Red actually is a very hard color to read. You should always avoid using red text.
For text. It's a graphic color. Doesn't have enough contrast for text.
I have a red, I have a yellow here. One. Is this yellow? No. Hold on 1 second.
That doesn't look like yellow.
Yeah. That yellow. There you go. So like that kind of
Yeah,
yellow.
now flip it white. Let's see what it does. Oh, that works.
Oh, you think that's better?
Yeah, that works.
I miss the red. I miss the red.
I'll make the bar red. I'm just right now. I just they're connected.
Well, it's a handy way to check, whether the color works.
I like the red. I like the red better.
Yeah, I do too on light. The only problem is when you go dark, it makes it harder to read.
Yeah, but it
Yeah.
stands out. I think it's okay. All right, I'll go ahead and push these up, and then the logo will be janky in dark mode until we get it fixed. But that's okay. It's not the end of the world. It's gonna be fine.
Stan will work on that. Yeah.
Okay, what else?
Good.
This has
Okay.
been fun, folks.
Really?
Yeah.
It's been a really good meeting. I enjoyed it.
I mean,
So-
way more stuff out of Steve Lembark than I thought we'd be getting. But my,
Yeah, he claimed what, a half an hour presentation?
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 You might have a little something for us.
Well, I tried to do 3 questions per slide, but I just fell asleep a couple of times.
Oh,
So Stephen was in town back around July the 27th, and we got together, and so over dinner, we talked about things he might be able to do.
We're
Presentation.
still recording. We're still recording. Be
So,
careful what you
so-
say.
I'm not gonna say anything bad. So yeah, he had some time to consider what he could put together for tonight. So he made it sound like this was just a quick rush, but no, he did a nice job of preparing for it. All right. Let's see. Any other questions on other topics? Comments on other topics?
I'll throw out there the basic job control, foreground, background, and jobs that should work in most shells from the mid 90s on.
Okay.
Does anybody know anything about port knocking?
Yes.
Does anybody brave enough to volunteer to do a base on port knocking? Hint.
We can talk.
Okay. All right.
Cool. Right.
I'm willing to provide as much help as I possibly can, which means I know nothing about the topic other than
I was
kinda-
going to say, what is port knocking for? I've heard the term, but I don't know what it's used for.
That's about
If you want the answer to that, you'll have to tune in maybe next month or the following month, whenever Tyler and Stan get this organized.
That's Tyler or Grant?
All right.
Grant.
Is that Tyler or Grant who volunteered to work?
Grant.
Oh, I'm sorry, Grant.
Yeah.
Go ahead and end the recording, then I'll give you a 90-second answer of what it is.
Okay. Let's see. Hearing no other things that need to be on the recording. This was the general monthly meeting of SLUUG, SLUUG, the St. Louis Linux Unix Users Group. Today's date was Wednesday, October the 9th, 2024. Our speakers tonight were Stephen Lembark, and he was talking about job control in the bash shell. And before that, we had
Tony Zafiropoulos.
Tony Zafiropoulos, who was talking to us about cyber security improvements with AI. So thank you all for coming. We appreciate it, and we'll see you next Thursday. Next Thursday, it'll be a talk on linter and other tools for cleaning up your code, and that'll be Thursday at the St. Louis SLUUG meeting. Thank you, and good night.